That scene at Osgood's Lounge in Concord ended with Ron's departure alone, after having bought Sarah a second drink and Sarah's return to her friends in the booth. I don't know what she told them, but it's not hard to imagine. The three women were not close friends, merely fellow workers at Rumford Press, where they stood at the end of a long conveyor belt day after day packing TV guides into cartons. They all hated their jobs, and frequently after work, when they worked the day shift, they put on their cowboy hats and boots, which they kept all day in their lockers, and stopped for a drink or two on their way home. This had been their first visit to Osgood's, however, a place that, prior to this, they had avoided out of a sneering belief that no one went there but lawyers and insurance men. "We'll have to come in here again," Sarah said to her friends, her voice rising slightly, which they did that Friday. And once again Ron appeared with his evening newspaper. After a few minutes, Sarah was once again at his side. "Hi." I said earlier that I am the man in the story, and my friend Sarah Cole, now dead, is the woman. I think back to that night, the second time I had seen Sarah, and I tremble, not with fear, but in shame. My concern then, when I was first becoming involved with Sarah, was merely with the moment, holding on to it. She talked more easily than she had the night before, and I listened as eagerly and carefully as I had before, again, with the same motives, to keep her in front of me, to draw her forward from the context of her life and place her, as if she were an object, into the context of mine. I did not know how cruel this was. When you've never done a thing before, and that thing is not simply and clearly right or wrong, you frequently do not know if it is a cruel thing. You just go ahead and do it. Maybe later you'll be able to determine whether you acted cruelly. Too late, of course, but at least you'll know. One night, several weeks later, Ron meets Sarah at Osgood's, and after buying her 3 White Russians and drinking 3 scotches himself, he takes her back to his apartment in his car, a Datsun fastback coupe that she says she admires, for the sole purpose of making love to her. I'm still the man in the story, and Sarah is still the woman, but I'm telling it this way because what I have to tell you now confuses me, embarrasses me, and makes me sad. And consequently I'm likely to tell it falsely. I'm likely to cover the truth by making Sarah a better woman than she actually was, while making me appear worse than I actually was or am. Or else I'll do the opposite, make Sarah worse than she was, and me better. The truth is, I was pretty, extremely so, and she was not, extremely so, and I knew it, and she knew it. She walked out the door of Osgood's determined to make love to a man much prettier than any she had seen up close before, and I walked out determined to make love to a woman much homelier than any I had made love to before. We were, in a sense, equals. No, that's not exactly true. I'm not at all sure she feels as Ron does. That is to say, perhaps she genuinely likes the man, in spite of his being the most physically attractive man she has ever known. Ron unlocks the door to his apartment, walks in ahead of her, and flicks on the lamp beside the couch. It's a small, single-bedroom, modern apartment, one of 30 identical apartments in a large brick building on the Heights, just east of downtown Concord. Sarah stands nervously at the door, peering in. Come in, Ron says. She steps timidly in and closes the door behind her. She removes her cowboy hat, then quickly puts it back on, crosses the living room, and plops down in a blonde easy chair, seeming to shrink in its hug out of sight to safety. Behind her, Ron, at the entry to the kitchen, places one hand on her shoulder, and she stiffens. He removes his hand. Would you like a drink? No, I guess not, she says, staring straight ahead at the wall opposite, where a large framed photograph of a bicyclist advertises in French the Tour de France. Around a corner, in an alcove off the living room, a silvery gray 21-speed bicycle leans casually against the wall, glistening and poised, slender as a thoroughbred racehorse. I don't know, she says. Ron is in the kitchen now, making himself a drink. I don't know. I don't know. What? Change your mind? I can make a White Russian for you. Vodka, cream, Kahlua, and ice, right? Sarah tries to cross her legs, but she is sitting too low in the chair, and her legs are too thick at the thighs, so she ends after a struggle with one leg in the air and the other twisted on its side. She looks as if she has fallen from a great height. Ron steps out from the kitchen, places one hand on Sarah's shoulder, and this time she does not stiffen, though she does not exactly relax either. She sits there, a block of wood, staring straight ahead. "Are you scared?" he asks gently. Then he adds, "I am." "Well, no, I'm not scared." She remains silent for a moment. "You're scared?" "Of what?" She turns to face him, but avoids his blue eyes. "Well, I don't do this all the time, you know. Bring home a woman He trails off. "Picked up in a bar." "No, I mean, I like you, Sarah, I really do. And I didn't just pick you up in a bar, you know that. We've gotten to be friends, you and me." "You want to sleep with me?" she asks, still not meeting his steady gaze. "Yes." He seems to mean it. He does not take a gulp or even a sip from his drink. He just says yes, straight out and cleanly, not too quickly either, and not after a hesitant delay. A simple statement of a simple fact. The man wants to make love to the woman. She asked him, and he told her. What could be simpler? "Do you want to sleep with me?" he asks. She turns around in the chair, faces the wall again, and says in a low voice, "Sure I do, but it's hard to explain." "What? But what?" Placing his glass down on the table between the chair and the sofa, he puts both hands on her shoulders and lightly kneads them. He knows he can be discouraged from pursuing this, but he is not sure how easily. "You and me, Ron, we're real different." She glances at the bicycle in the corner. "A man and a woman," he says. "No, not that. I mean different. That's all. Real different. More than you think. You're nice, but you don't know what I mean, and that's one of the things that makes you so nice. But we're different. Listen," she says, "I gotta go. I gotta leave now." The man removes his hands and retrieves his glass, takes a sip, and watches her over the rim of the glass, as not without difficulty the woman rises from the chair and moves swiftly toward the door. She stops at the door, squares her hat on her head, and glances back at him. "We can be friends, though, okay?" she says. "Okay, friends. I'll see you again down at Osgood's, right?" "Oh, yeah, sure." "Good. See you," she says, opening the door. The door closes. The man walks around the sofa, snaps on the television set, and sits down in front of it. He picks up a TV guide from the coffee table and flips through it. He does not once connect the magazine in his hand to the woman who has just left his apartment, even though he knows she spends her days packing TV guides into cartons that get shipped to warehouses in distant parts of New England. He'll think of the connection some other night, but by then the connection will be merely sentimental. It'll be too late for him to understand what she meant by different. But that's not the point of my story. Certainly it's an aspect of the story, the political aspect if you want, but it's not the reason I'm trying to tell it in the first place. I'm trying to tell the story so that I can understand what happened between me and Sarah Cole that summer and early autumn 10 years ago. To say we were lovers says very little about what happened. To say we were friends says even less. No, if I'm to understand the whole thing, I'll have to say the whole thing. For in the end, what I need to know is whether what happened between me and Sarah Cole was right or wrong. Character is fate, which suggests that if a man can know and then to some degree control his character, he can know and to that same degree control his fate.